To truly understand what powerlifting is, you must first understand what it was. The man who's considered the godfather of modern powerlifting is the legendary strongman, Paul Anderson.
Paul Anderson was like the man, you know. He was the man. It's kind of like, you know, if you're a baseball player now, you talk about Babe Ruth or Willie Mays or Hank Aaron or something like that. He was the man. And he's the one that really showcased the squat and the deadlift and the bench press back then.
He was like a one-man gang, and he did everything so far in advance of, well, he didn't have any competitors. He was just, even the things he did back then are still wild now. I mean, he was like, we called him the first powerlifter on the cover issue that we had a few years back, because he sort of blazed the trail.
Even though Mr. Anderson was primarily an Olympic lifter, he was also a pioneer in the squat, which is the cornerstone lift for all traditional powerlifting.
Well, of course, when it comes to power, I think Paul Anderson was the standard since 1950, but I seen him do 6 reps with 600 pounds in the squat, way below parallel, no shoes on, no knee wraps, and he was just an amazing guy.
Ricky Dale Crane is one of the most dominant powerlifters of the modern era. With 10 national titles, 5 world titles, and over 100 international and world records, Ricky has been involved in powerlifting in one way or another since he was a kid, and is universally recognized as one of the foremost historians of powerlifting.
Well, I grew up in the sport. I can just remember as a little kid in the 50s and the early 60s in California, and I'd go down like to the Berkeley or Oakland YMCA where there was powerlifters, bodybuilders, and Olympic lifters down there, and they were pretty basic down there. I mean, you know, you did squats and benches, and I don't think anybody really liked the deadlift back then. Bunch of them like that nowadays too, huh? But you'd see them training down there, and the bars were bent, half of them, and the plates were those real thick 45s, and half of those were kind of broken or cracked, and it was kind of really neat, because I'd go down there and I can still remember some of those guys' names. And I mean, you know, they put on an old gray pair of sweats and a t-shirt and just go crazy for 3 or 4 hours on a Saturday or something.
Before powerlifting was regulated as a 3-lift sport, it was called odd lifts.
They used to call what we did odd lifts, and it would include the curl, squat, bench, not always the deadlift, and sometimes some other odd lift. And so it never really was the same necessarily from one meet to the next.
The odd lifts sort of progressed into the power lifts, and they were called odd lifts or power lifts, or there was other names for them too. And depending on which part of the country you're in, I guess it depended on what made up the odd lifts or power lifts. They had a deadlift curl meet. And then I remembered something as I was talking to you earlier about bench, squat, and the continental clean and jerk. And I got you on that one because you didn't know what a continental clean and jerk was. And the bar, you'd lift the bar up and set it on your weightlifting belt here, and then you lift it up to a clean, and then you jerk it. So it was kind of a 3-movement deal. And we had just every combination of those, really. And so in some places in the country, you'd have more of one than the other. And then finally, they started settling down, so probably in the either late 50s or early 60s, it became powerlifting, sort of became known as just the bench, squat, and the deadlift. The AAU controlled all amateur sports in the country till the late 70s, and Congress, and I'm not sure who brought the lawsuits forward or whatever, but the antitrust laws were kind of broken up then a little bit, and so the AAU was forced to break up all of their sports. And at that point there, they just kept, I believe, something like track or gymnastics or swimming or whatever, I'm not sure exactly. But AAU, during the transition period of 78, 79, 80, along in there, they became the USPF of the AAU. And then after the complete breakup of all the sports, which was mandated by Congress in the late 70s, they became officially the USPF.